What's up, everyone? Welcome back to MCU in chronological order, and this time we're going to take a look at the first movie of Phase 1 and the movie that kickstarted the MCU, 2008's Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr. and directed by Jon Favreau. Okay, let's waste no time. Let's try and make this review as short and sweet as possible. 15 years later, I still very much enjoy the first Iron Man movie. This is a good movie, and when you compare it to the other two movies in the Iron Man trilogy, the first Iron Man movie is still the best Iron Man movie. This movie told the best story, it has the best villain, and it's just and overall, you can tell this movie was made with a lot of passion, was made with a lot of heart. You can tell that Jon Favreau and his team took a lot of care into making this thing. You can tell by the performances that everyone doing this was bringing their A game. You know, enough can't be said about Robert Downey Jr. and his portrayal of Tony Stark as Iron Man. He is Iron Man. He literally is the character of Tony Stark. Like this, Robert Downey Jr. fits this character so much that there's nothing you can say. Like, there's literally nothing you can say about Robert Downey's performance as Iron Man, Tony Stark, throughout the years that has not been said before. He kills every single scene he's in. He crushes every single moment he's in. He's got that perfect balance of, he's got that combination of just sarcastic wit, but still comes across as very charming and very, very likable, despite his, despite being full of himself. Downey Jr. found that perfect mix. And I think if you had any other actor playing the role of Stark, it wouldn't have worked. I don't think they would have been able to find that balance. Downey found that balance. Of course, it also doesn't hurt that before even becoming Iron Man, Downey was already a phenomenal actor. Of course, his personal life and things that he did, leading up to his eventual comeback, which was not with Iron Man. That is what it is. That is what it is. He was very self-destructive in his early years, but he got himself back together again. And look at him now. He's like one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, and Iron Man was the movie that really catapulted him back into the A-list. His performance in this movie was fantastic. The chemistry that he has with nearly every single actor in this movie is spot on. I like him and Gwyneth Paltrow who plays Pepper Potts. I like their budding romance in this movie. I like how Pepper is somebody who does not always take a lot of Tony's, nonsense, and she can dish it right back to him. I think Gwyneth Paltrow in this movie, she kind of gives an understated performance, and is actually one of the better romance angles in a superhero movie, because they don't technically get together at the end, but the door is left open of them possibly getting together of them possibly getting together is what I'm trying to say. So I like how that's handled, and I also like how Pepper has a little something to do in the climax, as she's the one who has to go on like a little mission for Tony to try and expose Obadiah Stane and his corruption. So I like that. Pepper actually has something to do. She's a really nicely written character. You have Jon Favreau himself plays Happy Hogan. Doesn't have a lot to do in this movie, but whatever. It is what it is. Terrence Howard plays Rhodey, War Machine, James Rhodes, Tony's best friend. I like Terrence Howard as an actor. But I am kind of glad that they got Don Cheadle to replace him, to be honest with you. I can't buy Terrence Howard as a military man or anything like that. He just didn't have that presence or command. But he and Downey did have some decent on-screen chemistry with one another. But you can also tell that, he was a bit of a miscast. And that's not a slight against Terrence Howard. Not every actor can fit a role that they're playing. He did try, though. He did try. I just think Don Cheadle, from the second he came in Iron Man 2, he just had the role of Rhodey down pat, and you kind of forget that Terrence Howard was the first James Rhodes. But I do like the tease of him seeing the prototype Iron Man outfit, which is a nice little tease for what will become with him in War Machine. That's at the end of the movie. And I also like how he plays a little bit of a role in the climax as well, when Tony and Ironmonger are having their battle, and he convinces his team that it's just a training exercise. so that way no one interferes. Okay, that's cool. I liked it, and I also like how when Tony's trapped in the in the cave, he leads the investigation to try and save him. So like Rhodey does have his moments in this movie. uh, Jeff Bridges is Obadiah Stane. I'm a big fan of Jeff Bridges as an actor. I think he's great in this movie. I think he's awesome as Obadiah Stane. I like the character of Obadiah Stane. He's probably one of my favorite MCU villains, who is just like this corrupt businessman who is pretty much the exact opposite of Tony Stark. Of course, when we first see Obadiah Stane, he's presented as more or less Tony's mentor and surrogate father figure, like someone who looks out for him. But as the film progresses, we find out that it was actually Obadiah Stane who orchestrated Tony's capture and everything like that from the terrorist from the terrorist Ten Rings organization. It was all Obadiah Stane. He was the puppet master. Like, he wanted to eliminate Stark so that way he can have control of everything. So I kind of like how the movie became like this corporate espionage type of film with Tony and Pepper going into doing their investigation, trying to find out why Obadiah Stane did what he did and why he's doing what he's doing. And Jeff Bridges, I thought, put in a very good performance. I liked him as Obadiah Stane. I think he was really, really good. His on-screen chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. is spot on. Every scene that these two are in, I pay attention to it because I think they just bounce off each other so well. And Jeff Bridges has that right amount of vainness that he gives the character of Obadiah Stane, where you know that there's something just not right about this man. And then you get to the climax when he's the ironmonger. And yeah, it's just a typical two guys in suits just battling each other, and Obadiah Stane kind of turns more into a cartoon villain. When throughout the movie, he was like this great corporate espionage type of villain that could very much well be like a Lex Luthor type. So I liked everything for the first two acts, and in the third act, he kind of goes into Looney Tunes and territory, which kind of takes away from it a little bit. But the overall performance was solid. I like Jeff Bridges, and I like him in this movie. He's one of the best villains of the MCU, and probably one of the best villains of the Iron Man trilogy. And given the villains that would come in Iron Man's 2 and 3, not really saying much. Or saying much, depending on how you look at it. What else was supporting? Oh yeah, we also get an appearance from Clark Gregg, Phil Coulson. This was the first canonical. This was the first appearance of S.H.I.E.L.D., but canonically, the second appearance of SZA if you watch these moves from Captain America: First Avenger 2 now. It's good to see Clark Gregg. I don't really like the fact that I don't know what I'm trying to say. Okay. Like seeing Clark Gregg in this movie. I like him as Phil Coulson. This is his first appearance. I like how the running gag of him trying to debrief Tony and he keeps getting avoided. I like the whole running joke of him constantly having to say S.H.I.E.L.D.'s full name until the end of the movie where he's just like, just call it S.H.I.E.L.D. I like how Phil Coulson and Pepper play a role in the climax of the movie as they're trying to apprehend Obadiah Stane. Like, I think Clark Gregg has a lot of good moments peppered all throughout this movie. And it was fun, and it's, I like it. I like the character of Phil Coulson. He's got that dry sense of humor to him. And you have an actor and Clark Gregg who knows how to bring out that dry sense of humor. In terms of the overall action and Jon Favreau's directing, I think the action in this movie is really well handled. It's not a very action-heavy movie. You could say the first half hour. The first half hour is basically Tony being held captive in a cave, and he comes into contact with this man called Jensen, who acts as his mentor and somebody who helps him escape. And the movie also drops this little hint that these two have met each other long ago in the past, with Tony not remembering it. I like the character of Jensen. I like the relationship that Jensen has with Tony. I like how it's Jensen who pretty much helps Tony, put him on his path of self-discovery, and pretty much tells him that the things he's doing, it may be for a good cause, but those things are not falling into the wrong hands. Basically, Tony is a weapons manufacturer, and these terrorists have pretty much used his own weapons against him, hence why he's being held captive in the cave. And now they want him to create this missile for them, so that way they can go on a mission of destruction. Of course, this opens Tony's eyes as he wonders, the he even says it, like he saw soldiers get killed by the weapons he created to help them. So he wants to, so he pretty much wants to clean up the messes that he feels that he's made. And that character journey begins in a cave with Jensen to pretty much set him on that path, and then throughout the course of the movie is Tony just walking down that path to being a better person and cleaning himself up, basically. So yeah, the stuff in the cave is really, really good stuff. Him and Jensen got good on-screen chemistry. I like the character of Raza, who was the secondary antagonist in this movie, who was the leader of the Ten Rings. He doesn't really have a whole lot to do, which is a shame, because he and Tony could have had a decent little fight scene while Tony's trying to escape. Instead, it's just Tony taking on the entire Ten Rings, and RZA kind of gets taken out in the cave itself. So the man doesn't really do much, but I like seeing the creation of the initial Iron Man suit with a bunch of scraps. I like Jensen's sacrifice to buy Tony more time. I like how this touches Tony, because this is the man who saved his life, basically. The reason why Tony has the arc reactor in his chest to keep the shrapnel from killing him was because of Jensen and his quick-witted mind. I like how that was the genesis and bond for Tony and Jensen. This man saved his life with a box of scraps. And I like Tony's escape from the cave. I thought that was a lot of fun. I like seeing the initial version of what would become the Iron Man suit. That was really cool. So the stuff like Tony's capture is all good stuff. The events that led up to the capture was a lot of fun. Tony going to missing this award show because he's gambling. Rhodes getting annoyed with him when he's late to board a plane to go to Afghanistan to meet the soldiers and show off his new missile, the Jericho missile. I like all that stuff. Like, you can see the gleam in Robert Downey's eye, and you can hear you can see it. You can hear his performance. He's just having a lot of fun playing this guy, and it is a lot of fun seeing Downey Jr. play Tony Stark. It's great. But when Stark finally gets into the real Iron Man suit, where he goes to a village to save a bunch of people from being attacked by a bunch of terrorists, the suit looks awesome in live action. It's a beautiful modern day 2008 update of the comic book suit. It's very detailed. It looks cool. The red and the yellow, they all fit together perfectly. The design of the suit is straight off the page with that modern update. I like how Jon Favreau added the effect of the machinery working and the iron clanking. It gives it a sense of realism. I also like how the suit can be both a combination of CGI and practical effects in some areas. Side note, I think the CGI in this movie, some people may call it dated, but if you compare it to most recent MCU movies, the CGI in Iron Man is actually really good. It's kept to Jon Favreau's credit, he kept the CGI to a minimum. So that's why it's not really distracting. He used it when he needed to use it, and it works to the movie's advantage. Like, he chose to focus on the story and the characters first, and the action second. Like, because when you get the action, it's almost like a prize, and you're not bored with the characters too, because the movie is really well written for the most part, and the characters and their story actually keeps you engaged, especially Tony Stark's story and what he has to go through and the things and the revelations that he comes across. And of course, this movie's got a good sense of humor. This is the Marvel humor done right. And I wish every single Marvel movie after Iron Man took from Iron Man. Instead of going down that cringy humor that is just forcing a joke, Iron Man is just a naturally funny movie because the humor is all character based, and it's not forced at all either. It just comes natural. And I wish that the other MCU movies would have followed down this path, because it would have made every single movie after Iron Man that much better in terms of the comedic aspect their comedic aspect. And of course, that a lot of that has to do with Jon Favreau, having roots in comedy and being a comedic actor himself. And I like the fact that the majority of the script was mostly all ad-lib. Like, the actors basically had the story, they had the outline, and they had some pieces of dialogue, and they filled it in the gaps themselves. So what we're watching on screen is basically a movie that's mostly ad-libbed, and it feels so natural, and it feels just so right. It's like the first Iron Man movie, when you watch it, especially when you have all the context of the back of the behind the scenes stuff. It's a very unique movie, like when you look at it. I mean, to some it would be like, oh, just a generic action superhero movie. No, no, no. It's got some quirk. It's got a lot of quirkiness to it, and I appreciate it for that. So yeah, trying to see what else is there for me to add. I think I've covered basically everything I wanted to cover with the first Iron Man movie. Like I said, the special effects I think look really, really good. The final fight scene between Stark and Obadiah Stane, it could have been better than what it was, but it was entertaining for what it was. I wasn't really a big fan of Tony Stark's fake out death. I thought that was forced. He didn't really need that. But I do love, love, love the ending of the press conference and Downey and Stark proclaiming he is Iron Man before cutting to the end. That's an iconic scene, and I love that. And of course, the post-credit scene with Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury hinting at the Avengers, also good stuff. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think Iron Man 2008 is still a movie that greatly holds up. This movie is still fun to watch. It's still one of the better MCU movies. Well, it's still one of the best MCU movies. Is it my favorite all-time MCU movie? No. Is it one of my favorites of Phase 1? Absolutely. And that's why I'm gonna give Iron Man a solid 8 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.